All right. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rucha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is If Your Eyes Are Open, You Will See. And pretty much I was just meditating on this particular scripture in the book of Revelation, chapter 13. It's not what you think. I know you think it's the MOTB, but that's not what I was talking about, even though that's a part of it. But it's another part of that scripture that rings true today. And I wanted to touch on that because I was watching this video last night before I went to bed, and I linked it in the description box. It's called History of Nuclear Power. Then it says Summary on Map. And pretty much they go into the history of how, like they gave like a brief history on how the nuclear missiles were created. And pretty much roughly started in 1896. There was a man by the name of Antoine Henry Becquerel, and pretty much he was an engineer and a physicist, and he accidentally discovered uranium salts emit a penetrating radiation that can be registered on a photographic plate. So with these uranium salts, he saw that there was an emission of radiation from those uranium salts, and that kind of began, you know, this whole quest. I looked him up. Pretty much he died pretty young. He died at the age of 55, and I said, yeah, he died of radiation poisoning. So as I read down, the cause of death, they said, was a heart attack, but they said when they found him, radiation burns on his body. So pretty much he died of radiation exposure, because back then they didn't know about the radiation being emitted, because he got his ideas from another guy that supposedly created the X-ray, and that's what how he got the idea to research into this uranium salt. All right. And then a year later, 1897 and then 1898, you had a husband and wife couple by the name of Mary Sklodowska Curie and Pierre Curie, and they discovered other elements that emit radiation, and they called it radioactivity. And the other elements were radium, polonium, and uranium itself. All right. Then, as it progresses into the 1900s, you had a man by the name of Ernest Rutherford. All right. He, was bringing out some stuff. I'm just reading off of this paper some notes that I jotted down to kind of set the tone for the lesson. But then in April of 1932, you had a man by the name of John Cockcroft and Ernest Walton were the first to split atoms. All right. So they were the first to be able to split atoms, and what they did was they put lithium into this generator, and they started bombarding it with, I believe it said protons. I can't remember if it was protons or what it was. And they saw that it split into nuclei, and I forgot the name of the nuclei that it split into. So that's when the nucleus or the atoms started to split, because that's pretty much what nuclear energy is the splitting of atoms. And that's what the Most High caused to infuse up in the heavens when he rained fire and brimstone upon Sodom and Gomorrah, which were elements that were made, or the elements that were infused together to create that combustion, so to speak. All right. It says, and then in 1938, you had German, I believe he was a physicist also, Otto Hahn Fritz, and then you had Strassmann. It says by accident split uranium atoms. So they split the uranium atoms. You know, so this was a, you have to understand that um, this whole nuclear arsenal, nuclear missiles, hypersonic missiles, and all the stuff that Esau has today as a blessing from his sword is something that has progressed centuries. You know, it wasn't a thing where they just learned it and then just made something. No, it took time. You know, it took time, a lot of money, effort, energy. Scriptures say that they accomplished a diligent search. Matter of fact, let me start off with that real quick, and then we can move on, because I got some other stuff on here I was trying to get through, you know, to kind of, like I said, give you a understanding or a picture of the lesson. So when we go to the book of Psalms chapter 64, and right, and verse 6, it says, let me let this noise go by. So it says, they search out iniquities. Because see, Esau does search. He is very diligent in what he does. But the way they do it, they're searching out iniquities, because they're searching out ways of destruction. See, when Nikola Tesla was searching out different forms of energy, he was doing it for the sake of helping humankind, you know, helping the average man, you know. These devils, when they do the searches, they're doing the searches to see what can destroy you. How can we make a bigger bomb? How can we make a greater explosion? How can we, just pretty much destruction. Search. And that's one thing you could say about these devils, that in their wickedness, they're very diligent in their wickedness. You know? They don't slack or lack in their wickedness. They're very diligent in that. It says, both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. Yeah, because they don't really share the actual reasoning for, for their searching. They're pretty much doing it because they want to destroy people, but making it seem like they're doing it for the benefit of mankind. And that's how they paint the picture, These devils are very devious, man. All right, so moving on. That was 1938. Then you have something called the Manhattan Project. All right. Now the Manhattan Project was started on August 13, 1942. Different sources give you different, dates, but that's about, roughly the time. And it ended in August. Some say 45, some say 46. And the Manhattan Project was pretty much Esau's way of creating this nuclear fusion and putting it into missiles to use as a weapon. All right. Now, back when the going on in France, it was going on in London or England and Germany. And when they really started deep into the understanding of creating this nuclear technology, Einstein, forget his first name for the moment. Einstein and Szilard, what was his name? Einstein and Szilard, right. They wrote a letter to President Roosevelt to let him know about this technology, and that's how the U.S. was able to capitalize on this nuclear fusion, so to speak. I'm just calling it a nuclear fusion, So that's how America started to get into it, and that's when they created the Manhattan Project, and they brought on board many different scientists, Robert J. Oppenheimer being one of them, and many German scientists to actually work tirelessly, in creating this technology. Now, the scriptures tell us in the book of Isaiah, right? For those of you that don't know, there is a methodology right, or a method in which um, weaponry is created. In the ancient world, you had something called a smith or a blacksmith. A smith or a blacksmith would be an individual that would work with metal, and what they would do is they would forge metal by heating it up and hitting it with a hammer and create different types of weapons. They would create spears, they would create daggers, swords, arrows, shields, helmets, breastplates, different things. They would create long range weapons like arrows. They would create short range weapons like daggers, knives, so on and so forth. And that's how they got, that's how they made money, and that's how weapons were made. Now, when Esau came into power, the way that they started making their weapons, which are the modern technology of these weapons, would be through these missiles and these scientists that were infusing this energy, and then they figured a way to bottle it, so to speak, and able to put it on rocket propelled contraptions to send it from one part of the world to the other. Okay, and this is where you get the term ICBM, which is intercontinental ballistic missiles, because they go from one continent to the other. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Russians ICBM range is about 6,000 miles, if I'm not mistaken. You could double check that. Elder Pastor did videos on that. So Isaiah 54:16 says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire." So what is a smith? Those were the ancient individuals that would make the weapons for the ancient world, because the ancient war was fought conventionally. You go, men go on the battlefield. They have on, different types of armory or armor. They will have swords and knives and daggers and battle axes, and different things like that. And then they will go to war. They would yell, from the adrenaline, the testosterone, testosterone, that was pumping out there, because that adrenaline starts going, and it gets you, gets you hyped up, and that's how the ancient wars were fought. But the modern technology is pretty much fought long range by missiles, by tanks, machine guns. You had pretty much the first machine gun, you could say, was a Gatling gun in America. And this is how warfare was fought in the ancient world. But now in this time, the modern weapons of warfare are nuclear, are atomic, high tanks and all of that. So Isaiah 54:16, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire." So these physicists that were playing around with these different elements, they figured a way to infuse that energy for eventually what would be known as a nuclear missile. And then they'll say, well, this guy, by accident, he discovered that uranium salts do this. And these people, they've discovered other elements but that was the Lord working with them, working on their minds, working on that intellect, to be able to put these things together, so that in today's world, these devils could have that technology. And that discovery of the uranium salts emitting radiation cost this guy his life eventually, but it was a sacrifice that he made for these devils. And today they got this technology, because he borrowed from the X-ray thing. Then other people that came after him or around his time found out that other elements did the same thing, and then they kept building like that. And this is how eventually the nuclear energy started to be revealed. All right. So it says, it says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bring forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy." Right. So he brings the instrument from his work, which is what? The missiles. And the waster to destroy is that missile, because what is the purpose of those? What is the purpose of those missiles? To destroy. That's what they were created for. They were created as a defense mechanism. Okay. Let me know if it's too windy. I'll pull the phone in a little closer. If the wind is taking over, let me know, and I'll try to turn the phone a different way, so that the wind doesn't hit it as much. So going back to this, the Manhattan Project, that's what began that whole, thing. Now, in the Manhattan Project, at the end of it, what ended it was because by the time they had created this technology of these missiles, the Germans had already given up. They had already surrendered. And but the Japanese were still holding out. Now, what they don't tell you they do tell you if you research it in history, but they don't really speak about it. When you go back into the history, Esau was dropping bombs all over Japan, Tokyo, and different other cities prior to the two main bombs that they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All right, Fat Man and Little Boy. Prior to that, they were dropping many bombs. But the thing is that those bombs, they were causing damage, but not on the scale that these two bombs created. Still sounds good. Okay, the water, Elder. All right, so when they dropped those bombs in 1945, Little Boy was a uranium bomb, and Fat Man was a plutonium bomb. All right, and they caused a lot of havoc and destruction. Now, when you look at, I'm not sure if it was in Hiroshima or Nagasaki, there were 2 trees that were left untouched. Everything was devastated. People were burnt. They had radiation poison. The land was totally decimated. Nothing was growing. It was fucked up. But there were 2 actual trees that survived the blast and didn't have a lick of damage on them. And there were 2 ginseng trees. All right? And that caused Esau to do research on the ginseng tree. All right? So that's something. It's something about that ginseng. I believe it was ginseng trees. I had to double check, but I believe it was 2 ginseng trees that survived that destruction. So you have to wonder, like, damn, what the hell what the hell are these trees made of that they were able to survive that blast? There was nothing. There was, as you can see over there on the side, you see a tree on the ground there. There was nothing. Nothing happened to those trees. They were just still standing there. They were fresh and healthy as could be. Okay, ginseng tree. Okay, yep. Because I did, run across that information years ago. All right, so then you move up to 1949, right? Because all of this what's the word I'm looking for? Well, actually, that really caused Russia to start, looking into the nuclear fusion thing, the nuclear, energy, and just nuclear missiles for the sake of being protected against America, right? High side of hills and mountains, the plant grows. All right. All right. So it says in 1949, USSR conducts first nuclear test. Right, because remember they dropped that bomb in 1945, and there was 2 bombs, and they was like, oh snap, we got to do something about this, Now, you know what? Before I read on anymore, this is pretty much the main focus on the lesson, right? For and the main focus for the lesson on the reason why it's called, if you have eyes to see, you will see. The book of Revelation, chapter 13, as I mentioned earlier. I started 11. The point is a little further down, but verse 11 is important because when you read this chapter is a historical chapter, and it spans the history of roughly, really, like you could say 2,000 years, because when the apostle John saw this vision, he was in the very the end of the Edomite rule of the Roman Empire, 96 AD, which is the same year that Domitian, was taken down, and Jake, which was Nerva, started ruling the ancient Roman Empire, but they were ruling it under the same power as the Romans. All right, it wasn't until later on that they started what was called the Holy Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire, and that was a period where that particular beast or that particular head was wounded, as it were, to death. And there was a certain period of time, which was 1,000 years, that beast was wounded. And then they came back into power during the time of the Renaissance. Okay? So in Romans 13 and 11, it says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." Now this other beast coming from earth was the 8th head of this entire beast, the dragon, which is America. Okay? And when it says he had 2 horns like a lamb, that represents the two-party system, which are the Democrats and the Republicans. Back then they were known as the patricians and the plebeians. And pretty much the reason why it says they're like a lamb is because they act like they're on the behalf of the people, but they're really not. They're really on behalf of the ones that run the government, which are the international banking families. So they're lobbying for these giant corporations that have invested, much money into these congressmen to pass legislation to help them push their agenda forward so that they can continue to make money. And it says, and he spake as a dragon, and the speaking as a dragon is their legislation. You have something called draconian legislation, which goes back to Draco, which was an Athenian lawgiver out of Greece, and he was known for his strict, and harsh punishments for breaking even the smallest law. Like if jaywalking was a thing in the past, in that time, you would have got put to death for jaywalking. So whoever did the least crime to the worst crime received the same punishment. So it was severe punishment, and that's what's coming. Because once they get all these laws into place, which they have a lot of them in place, once they get everything into place, then they could use that to enforce their agenda. All right? So it goes on to say, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, because when America was established, they tell you that the so-called founding forefathers, which were Masons, which established their government after the ancient Roman Empire and after Egypt. But namely the ancient Roman Empire. And we see that, and we also see Egypt. We see it on the back of the dollar bill, the pyramid, the pyramid of Cheops, or Cheops, however you say it. And then you have the ancient Roman Empire revived through America by way of their legislation, by way of their governmental buildings. When you go to school, they teach you numerical numbers. The Roman numerals. The Roman numerals go back to Rome. There's Latin writing on the back of the dollar bill. So all of these things are proof that they mimic and set up their government according to the ancient Roman Empire. They have the eagle as a symbol. Ancient Romans had the eagle as a symbol. The Greeks had the eagle as a symbol, and many other these Greek empires had the eagle as a symbol. All right. But here's the point right here. I'm sorry. It says, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, which is the Roman Empire, whose deadly wound was healed. And when healed, during the time of the Renaissance. Now, what was the Renaissance about? The Renaissance was pretty much, what the word Renaissance means, rebirth. And the Renaissance is the rebirth of the Esau coming back into power. Because rebirth, re is back, and naissance, a French word meaning birth. So rebirth. So how were they rebirth? Well, they were in captivity. They were in a low state as far as being servants, being subject to Jake back then. There's a picture in a book, I forget the name of the book, but it's called A Day in the King's Court. And you see a bunch of Jakes, that are officiating the business of judge, lawyers and all of that. And then you have Edomites being brought to court, just like they do Jake today. And this is why they do that. And this is why Benjamin Franklin didn't want, I believe it was at that time, was certain Germans to come over here because they were swarthy. Because he knew the history, because he was back and forth between America and Europe. And he knew what was going on back then. And he knew that what Jake had done to Esau back then. He knew that. So he didn't want that, a repeat of that over here in America. All right? Damn, there's a lot of demons, out there. A lot of scoffers. Damn, money. So this is the point. That was, some history there. But this is the point right here, the 13th verse. What the hell's going on the comic board? It says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And if you have eyes to see, you will see that the scriptures don't lie. There has been no other nation that did that prior to America doing that, causing fire to come down from heaven. And that goes back to what? To the time of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They also did it, during the time of, NATO, Herzegovina and all that. But the main thing was that those two bombs that they dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that devastated them Ammonites. So much so that they had to give up, because what was coming next. They would have probably got rid of the whole island of Japan. So this is proof that, America and the things that they did are written in the scriptures prophetically, but it's just written in parabolic form. Because if it would have said America is going to drop bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the year 1945 to end World War II, they would have been banned the Bible, man. They would have been banned the Bible. Just like you're not going to go and when you read the prophecy of the blessings that God put upon his sons, it's not going to say Judah is the so-called Negroes, Benjamin is the so-called West Indians, Levi is the so-called Haitians, Simeon is the so-called Dominicans, Ephraim is so-called... No, you're not going to see that. But when you read it and you've actually lived around the tribes, and you read what the scriptures are saying, and you look at the tribes and how they act and interact, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I see why the scriptures say that. Like Elder Pastor said this years ago. I remember back in the school in Connecticut. He said, in order to really understand the tribe breakdowns, you have to have lived around the tribes to understand. And that was very profound when he said that. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. You meet Jakes from the tribe of Naphtali and all that. Tribe of Naphtali, baby. Inside joke. You meet them, and I believe it's either Asher or Naphtali. It said that they have, smooth words or soft words or something like that. I forget exactly how it's worded. And you speak to them, and that's really how they are. They really are like that. They're very mild-mannered people. But you wouldn't know that unless you actually interacted with them. You know? Like Ephraim is a fruitful bow. Back in the days, in the Bronx, and Ephraim was there with Judah. Shots fired. You know, they used to say pack them in like Puerto Ricans. Why? Because they had a lot of children. That was like the ongoing joke, but that was prophetical. All right. So enough of that. Let's move on. So they dropped the two missiles. One was a plutonium bomb, which was Fat Man. The other one was a uranium bomb, which is Little Boy. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. The USSR, United Socialist Soviet Republic, which was an ancient name. Today they're just called Russia. They conduct their first nuclear tests. And that's really what started the arms race. It says large sums of money, check this out. This is in the video, you can watch the video. Large sums of money are spent to gain technological superiority and gain the largest nuclear arsenal. And immediately what came to mind was the book of, Joel 3 and 9. It says, like, for one moment. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Because why? There's a certain time when prophecy is to be fulfilled, and it's dictated by what? By time. And once that time comes and goes, then that prophecy speaks. Right? So it says, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. And this is why you see the amassing of armies over there in the Middle East. The Most High is mustering that host over there. That's another one of the Lord's armies. You know, those the militaries of the world. All right. Then you have his heavenly military, which is Yahushua and the angels, headed by Michael underneath Yahushua. But this is the point. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. So what does it mean, beat your plowshares into swords? Meaning your plowshare was what? An agricultural instrument. Beat it in, take it and beat it into swords. Take your plowshares and beat your plowshares into swords. Because a sword is what? An instrument of war. So take the resources that you have for your agriculture, Salaki brothers, I haven't really been paying attention to the comment board, but the elder, he got it. So at that particular time, around from 1945 on, because in 1949, Russia started the first nuclear test. Russia, and really beginning with Russia, they started to invest a lot of money into this technology of the nuclear missiles, because they saw the devastation that it caused, and they really started ramping up and spending lots of money. So as Lord said, take the money that you're going to use for your agriculture and invest it into making weapons, because a great war is coming. And we're at that point now where we're at the time of the great war. Because before I read on, let me get real quick Revelation 8 and 13. It says, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. Now notice I said woe, woe, woe 3 times. Woe represents war, represents destruction. So there are 3 major wars, world wars, that are going to be fought before Yahushua comes back. Yahushua will come back in the midst of World War III. So you have World War I, which was back in around 19 was it 1917 around there, 1914 or something like that. I forget exactly what year it was. You know, you brothers know what I'm talking about. You can look it up yourself. I think it was 1914 to 1919, if I'm not mistaken. Then you had World War II, you know, which was in the 40s. And then it said, right now we're ramping up to World War II. What the hell's going on, man? Beautiful. Well, Argentina as well, they've gained their independence from Spain through poetry. Okay. Why does Afro-Mexicans appear drastically different than straight-haired Mexicans? Because you had when the slave masters brought the slaves down there from West Africa, they mingled. What's the difference? You had Jacob. Jacob had 4 wives, 4 women. You think they all look the same? Huh? You think all 4 of those women look the same? How do you know one of them didn't have straight hair? And straight hair comes from the so-called black man. The so-called white man comes from the so-called black man. So what are you talking about? So you mean to tell me that Blake Griffin's son, that looks like a little white boy with straight hair, why does he look different from his grandfather? Why does Blake Griffin's his son, that looks like a little white boy, why does he look different from Blake Griffin's grandfather? Blake Griffin's grandfather is super dark, and he has woolly hair. And I'll wait for your answer. Not really, but so you had the 3 world wars, World War II. Now we're fast approaching World War III. When we go to Revelation 9 and 12, it says, 1 woe is past, and behold, the 3rd woe cometh quickly. One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 woes more hereafter. So you have World War I passed, and then there were 2 more wars that came after that, which was World War II and World War III. All right? I mean, goddamn, where the fuck are all these scoffers coming from, man? All we're doing is teaching the Bible. Everybody's a goddamn expert, you know, until they bring out them goddamn guillotines. Then we're gonna see who the real expert. Oh no, I'm just a working man. I don't know nothing about that Bible stuff. I don't know nothing about that Hebrew Israelite stuff. Nope. You watch when the great persecution comes. All these, you know, self-aggrandized, professed Bible scholars are gonna become little pussies. Watch. Revelation 11 and 14. The 2nd woe is past with World War II, and behold, the 3rd woe cometh quickly. Right, and this 3rd woe that's coming quickly is going to be fought by fire, nuclear destruction. We go to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 5, and it says, for every battle of the warriors with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. Right, that's how ancient wars were fought. It says, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. Particular war that's coming is going to be with burning and fuel of fire. And what's going to cause that? These missiles. That's what the Lord said. He created the smith that bloweth the coal of fire and bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And he said he created the waster to destroy. That's why you have these scientists today actually the scientists from back in the 40s that created all of that technology, which what you have today is the product of it, which are the nuclear missiles, in whatever shape or form they may be. All right. So going back to Joel, Joel chapter 3 and verse 10, I read that again. It says, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, let the weak say I am strong. Because when America got the technology of those missiles, which they were, you know, their coattail was pulled by Einstein and Szilard, that letter they sent to Roosevelt. Russia had to do something to be able to combat, this weapon that America had now that was a superior weapon. So they took certain of those scientists with them, and they helped them create their nuclear fusions. And 4 years later, they tested their first missile. So then it goes on to say in the video, 1962, America places nukes in Italy, and they'll tell you that the reason why Russia, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the reason why Russia put missiles in Cuba was to help defend the Cuban people, the communist parties there, whatever the case may be. That's total bullshit. The reason why Russia or the USSR put missiles in Cuba back in 1962 was because America had missiles pointed at Russia in Turkey and in Italy. Okay? And that's what the whole Cuban Missile Crisis is all about. And then after that time, after the 1960s into the 70s, you had all of these different nations taking their money, as the scriptures say, that they would use for agriculture to build these modern day weapons to help them, or give them, get them out of that weak state or weak stage so that they can have a defense against the arsenal of America. You see? So there's a whole dynamic behind that, man. So when you read Revelation 13 and around the 12th verse or so, or 13th verse or so around there, where it says that they cause fire to come down from heaven. If you have eyes to see, you can see that that's talking about America. That can't be talking about anybody else, because who did that? Nobody else did that but America. They're the ones that dropped, these missiles from the sky through planes back then. Now they got rocket-propelled missiles, but through the planes they dropped. I don't know if that was the Enola Gay. They dropped these missiles on Japan and caused fire to come down from heaven, and it caused great fear in the people sight. And that's why these nations started investing their money into nuclear power, nuclear weaponry. And that's why the scriptures say, let the weak say I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. So you have the heathen armies gathering, and then you have the Lord's military, which is one of his militaries, which are the angels gathering together to come to this particular battle. It says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. The valley of Jehoshaphat, the word Jehoshaphat goes back to the word Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh's judgment. And that's what the so-called Middle East is. It's a hotbed for all of these different militaries to come together. Another name for it is Armageddon. Armageddon from the English. Then you have the Greek Armageddon also. It's a different way to pronounce it, but it's also Armageddon or something like that. It comes from the Hebrew Har-Magad-wan. Har means mount or mountain, and then God is where you get the word troop, like the tribe of Gad. And then the one at the end, W-A-N, means or represents plural. So Har-Magad-wan, mountain of the troops. All right? And that's where they're gathering together over there in the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Yeah, because the main beef that the Most High got with the rulers of the world is with the rulers of the world and their armies. All right, you can read Isaiah 34 for that, and it breaks it down that the Lord is coming to do battle with these devils, and with their armies. It says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Right. And then this goes hand in hand with Revelation 14, where it speaks about the same thing, the winepress of the Lord's fierceness. So the grapes represent Esau, the other nations, Jake, In this case here, over there, in what they call the Middle East, That's where all the militaries are being gathered. And the Lord is going to squash them like the pinche bugs that they are. Inside joke. Put you in a sickle. A sickle, when you pull out a sickle and harvest, that means that you were ready to chop down, the harvest. Everything was ripe. You were ready to get, to gather in your fruits or your veggies or whatever the case may be. That's what the sickle was for, to cut down. For the harvest is ripe. Yeah, so they're ripe. And man, if ever a kingdom or an empire was ever ripe for destruction, America is it. This bitch can't go down fast enough, man. This bitch cannot go down fast enough, man. This bitch should have been down, but it's the Most High's program, not ours. It says, for the press is full, right? And what is the press? The press would be like when you had grapes, you would put them in this floor, and once they got, you can't fit any more grapes, then you go to stomping. So the press is full. The militaries they're ready, they're ripe. They're ready to go. The wickedness done polluted the whole entire planet. It's time for these devils to go. It says, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for the wickedness is great. What's showing you it's not talking about the actual grapes. It's talking about these militaries. It's symbolic for these militaries that the Lord is ready to stomp out. It says, multitudes in the valley of decision, going back to Armageddon. It says, for the day of the Lord, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, is near in the valley of decision, because that's where the Lord is going to bring the last decisive battle, between evil and righteousness. And guess what? Love is going to win. Because you had hate and you had love. And although hate had love against ropes, love came back, hit him with an upper, adding to it, this inside joke. And pretty much righteousness is going to KO wickedness. Bottom line. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. Why? Because there's going to be so much smoke and soot and ashes and fire coming up out of this place that is going to block out the sun in this side of the world. That's why Esau calls it nuclear winter. It says, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. Right, because he's coming back to deliver us from captivity and to bring us back to the land. So shall you know that and we're not going to bring ourselves back there. All right? The Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua is going to bring us back there. So shall you know that I am Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, your power, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall no stranger pass through her any more. And it shall come to pass in that day that the mountains shall drop down new wine, which is this knowledge, this truth, because it's going to be back into righteousness. And the hills shall flow with milk, and everything's going to be blessed again. And all rivers of Judah shall flow with waters. Right, everything's going to be renewed, refreshed. There ain't going to be no more polluted waters, none of that. Because Revelation 8 speaks about pretty much contamination of these waters. Oh, and then in that video, the first, where was an accident in America, 3 Mile Island. Then you had Chernobyl back in '86. And then you had in 2011 Fukushima in Japan. And a fountain shall come forth of the house of the Lord, and shall water the valley of Shittim. Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolation. Yeah, because they're going down. These nations are going down. And Edom shall be a desolate wilderness for the violence against thy children of Judah. That's the main beef. You did a horrible thing to the children of Judah, so-called Negroes, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. But Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. That's right. For I will cleanse their blood that I had not cleansed, for the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua dwelleth in Zion. Beautiful. Barakatah Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua for that. So if you have eyes to see, you can see it, man. That the scriptures speak about America, speaks about this technology, it speaks about the MOTB, But if your eyes are not open, you're not going to see. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. You get a chance, you can watch the video. I did link it in the description box. If it doesn't pop up, then Lord's will, well, you can type in history of nuclear power. Then it says summary on map. Okay? And you'll be able to see it. It has a lot of information. So with that, I pray that you brothers and sisters are edified. To the next time I say shalom. The water for you brothers handling the common board, and the water for all the precepts you brothers put up. Shalom.